Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. It is December 4th, and we are going to 6 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order. Could you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Minutes of November 20th. What's the wish of the board?
Moved as written.
Second. Second. Any corrections?
Yes. God, I need to put it first. Hang on a second.
I'm not sure when we looked at them, but Kathy got a revised packet this afternoon, right? This morning, yes. So they may have been replaced since you saw them.
Okay. In the drive, what is in the
I
drive?
think she put them in the drive, but they're definitely the updated version in your packet.
Can I get one of those?
So I don't know that.
Is that your packet? Can I have a
Yeah,
packet?
you can have it.
Thank you.
Just in case you had already reviewed them.
Yeah, I looked at it a couple days ago. And it was
Yeah,
in there.
so.
Yeah. Oh, it's just the second page. Yes, that's still there. So 4B, agenda review. The gift donation maybe goes under the piano donation. There is where I made a comment. It was not about a non-public session. It was about a non-meeting, I think,
Oh, yeah.
technically speaking. And it was not about the gift or donation. It was about the pair contracts.
Any other corrections?
But we did add a gift and donation, so maybe it should have been 2 bullet points. Yeah, 2 items, yeah. That's it.
That was the only thing I saw.
Alright. All in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Those are passed. Alright. For immediate business, we have public comments. Seeing none. Do we have any consent items tonight?
Actually, the agenda review and the consent are flipped again. We fixed it for next time, but we should review the agenda fully.
Alright.
And we do have a consent item to add.
Yeah.
And then we also, number 12 will be the para contract. Or the actually adjournment becomes 12 and the contract becomes 11. That's it.
Okay. I think, because I do believe Mr. Gay will be here at some point, and I know item D, the Jim Flores, is something he was interested in.
Do you want to do the consent that we added?
Yeah, I was going to say that, and if Jim's not here at that point, if we, it's okay with the rest of the board, I can move Jim Flores down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what do we have for consent items?
You have a request from a staff member for unpaid leave. We have to put it into the packets. So one paragraph.
Can we ask the administration their take on it?
Do you have an opinion on the request for unpaid leave? Are you okay with it? Did you talk to the employee? Yes, okay.
And claim to there's nothing purchased yet.
Very nice.
Waiting to hear whether it's
Nice.
We want to make a motion to approve it or disapprove it?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, board.
Great.
Hey, Chair.
And Mr. Healy has arrived at 6:06.
So's Gigi.
And Gigi, we'll bring up to speed, Jim. We'll take care of public comments, minutes, the pledge, and
Consent.
Consent items.
All the hard stuff.
We're on item number D, and it is yours. Have fun, Stuart.
We were waiting for you.
We're waiting for you for D.
Ready to go.
Gym floor bids, right?
Yes.
Exciting. So, hi everyone. I don't know if everybody got a chance to take a look. The New England sports floors had uploaded a rather short presentation or bid, and they did put an addendum in this afternoon. I don't know if everybody got a chance to see that or not. So do you want to take a minute and read that?
Is it possible maybe just to, I don't know if Amber's prepared to or not, but just to give us a rundown of how many bids you got back and
Well, so we received two official in response to the RFP. With that said, I was just talking with Brian in the hallway. There was one vendor that originally had came and walked through and provided a quote prior to the RFP going out. He's going to make a copy of that, what that is, and then the board can decide whether you choose to make that a part of your submission or not. I did not receive a formal bid from them,
okay.
just from the forwarded email that Brian had. So we received two official, one prior.
That was the New England sports floors and then American.
Yep, those were the two official ones that we received in response to the RFP that was posted.
Sure. Well, based on that, do we want to wait a little bit on the gym floors until we see what Brian comes back with? Is the board open to considering?
Are we able to by our policy, or do we vote to like suspend that or choose not to, or do we have precedent, all that fun stuff?
I mean, we had a
It would be an exception, right?
it would be an exception.
And I don't have the policy number, but I believe we reserve the right to do what we believe is in best interest ultimately.
Board reserves the right to reject any or all bids and to accept the bid which appears to be in the best interest of the district. Can waive any formalities in or reject any or all bids. Yes.
Define rank.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there a reason why we would want to see that third number? Was there significantly less money? Was there a reason?
It's in the middle of
Okay.
the two bids we received, but it is a lot more thorough. One of the two bids that we did receive, the proposal was lacking information, so I requested some more information today. And the information received today were really one sentence answers.
Without any detail.
There was no detail,
Very
so I
almost
do
not.
think it would be worth.
Price change.
What's that? The price, well, it didn't change. I asked for clarification because they have a little arrow that goes up with the comment of demo, meaning plus demo. And so I asked for clarification, was it the 83 or whatever, or is it the 104? They came back with that second one.
So the first question is the board interested in looking at the additional bid that came in earlier than this RFP?
Sure, I'm open to looking at it, but we don't know whether it wasn't submitted because they're not interested.
They did do a walkthrough. I think my thought is, and this has happened other times, is that I think they think when they've come in and they've already submitted a proposal, they don't realize they need to resubmit a proposal.
Okay.
So I think we probably should have reached out and said, I know you submitted a proposal, but we do need an official bid.
Okay.
So in this regard, I think that's probably what happened.
So before we go considering this, does the board want to consider it?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
It doesn't matter in my opinion, so go.
Okay, you can pass it up.
And then has Mike and Cindy reviewed And I guess the gym teachers is basically their passion, right?
We've met with the one I'm handing you out right now, and the one with the eagle on it.
Okay.
We've met with both companies. This company I'm handing out now said that they could do the work within the year. The other company said that there's a good chance they will not get it done because they're already booked for the summer. This company, they're all booked for the summer. But this company that I just handed out as an option on the table to start the project during April break.
So let's take them one at a time. The first one, New England Sports Board, because we've talked about them a little bit. The price is the lowest. However, there's no detail on what actually is going to be used. There's no specifications on how it's going to be done.
That's it? This is,
That was the responses to my questions.
this one. There we go, I'm sorry.
It's the packet, yeah, the packet that said this.
Total cost of $104,940 includes everything. They do have good references, or at least places that look. We haven't checked their references, but
He said we can give you what you had or the attached product at the same price. So,
It was Robbins flooring. That was the company.
okay,
Within the RFP, I do state some specifications,
yeah.
that or like product. So he's saying,
But sorry, my question was, he didn't like attach something to this email.
no.
Okay.
So to me, this is a non-responsive, in my opinion.
Well, they did, yeah. If I hadn't reached out and asked specific questions, even still, I don't know if they gave a.
No idea what they're trying to do.
okay. So then
Yeah.
the second one is American Sports Board
Yep.
for a price of $138,536.
Yep.
Specific speak of exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. Brian, you said these folks can't do it this year.
When he came out, I think it was before the 11th. This is proposal date. He said he was already booked. His summer was almost booked at that point.
In the bid, he said we recommend scheduling during April and May, which is right during the school year.
Well, scheduling, does that mean
No.
do the schedule or then it's done? Sounds like schedule and April.
Right.
Who knows when?
No, yeah, you want it.
Yeah.
Right, and I imagine you guys don't want to put the gym out of commission for 4 to 6 weeks in the middle of April. Well, I mean, I don't know, is that?
It's something we've talked about. We haven't, well, obviously, I mean, it's a bigger conversation to have.
Right.
I just don't know how it works with, covering the money and all that. That's going to happen, or we might be waiting a whole another year from now. It's something that they're booked out, so this for 2020 summer, we might not be getting gym floor until 2021.
So, I think that's a factor here that we need to discuss, is when do we want this done? I mean, what's our anticipation?
These guys said it would take
5 to 6 weeks?
4 to 6.
4 to 6 weeks to complete. I mean, the ideal situation is you do it over summer, but
That being said, is that space just as useful? I mean, I know in the summertime, that's the holding pen for all the other stuff that's happening.
right.
So does that just throw monkey wrench in the works for everything else? I mean, it's gonna throw monkey wrench in the works anyway, but
And they put, who knows what they mean here by scheduling during April and May, but if it's April and May, the weather is turning nicer and a lot of gym classes could be outside. there's also that possibility. Have you had other schools do it during school year? Or?
It would be a trend, we would say.
Yeah, not that I know of, it doesn't mean the other districts didn't have it happen, but.
This company I spoke to, the Robbins Portwood, the last one I used, the last page, they said they have experience doing this during the school year. They usually what they do is they take that week of vacation and they do out all the demo at that point, so there's no dust or anything like that. And they bring disruption, and they bring in they start laying down the floor the following week.
It's really 45 weeks.
That's
and most of it's they said I think they said a solid week is they just leave and let the wood settle. So there's
It's
no
got a set, yeah.
because they leave.
So it's not that they're necessarily here working. they're
Right.
just-
Yeah.
They're acclimating like you would in
Exactly.
I mean, this is the American Sports Force is a really solid proposal. It has all the details that I want to see. It has.
I would, yeah, I mean, American Sports Force most certainly put the strongest proposal for it. It looks like they're using a similar product, using a similar manufacturer.
They're both, I don't know how you pronounce this, Danaher, is that how?
Danaher?
Yeah, they are, I believe they're using the same product,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
It doesn't really show,
Brian,
it does
you-
talk about
when
Robbins.
you talk to these contractors about pads and underlayments and magic and voodoo and all that stuff,
Yeah.
this has,
Everything, yeah. So they essentially what they do, they'll tear up the floor for any water issues if there are any. Then they will address that where it needs to be, and then they take into account the doors and angle, any kind of angles that need to be made because of the way some doors in our gym open into the gym or others out, so they have to account for that. And they include all the paint and lining and all that. Anything extra, the one thing that would cost extra that both the gym teachers and Cindy asked for was new drilled holes for a volleyball, so the volleyball court could play the length of the basketball court instead of doing 2 half courts. So like when parents are watching it, you can sit on both sides of the stands and watch the game.
It shouldn't be additional, I did put that in the RFP.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
So that might be an issue for
Maybe it
this
was just-
vendor
maybe it was
because
just
they
at the
didn't
time
submit
I
a
was-
new one.
Maybe
But
at the time
it
I was
is
thinking-
in, I didn't know, I did take note of that and that was included.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was, it jogs a memory for that I included that.
So we didn't get any references for this one?
These guys?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of now. The only I know they are doing the UVM floor currently. That's the only thing
Yep,
know.
I did put that in there. 2 new basketball holes drilled at center line, including minimal lines for volleyball, half court, and basketball.
Okay.
Nate?
In terms of the timing, do we know that is even if one of these could do it during the April-May date, like they're talking about, could we get the funds mobilized? Like you brought up the point, Brian. Like how what's the fastest this could actually happen in terms of being able to write a check or
These
execute this?
American Sports Floor requires 70% material payment upon order. So I think as soon as we commit to somebody, we are paying 70% for the materials.
And
If we
we-
committed to that.
And we have the funds available to do
Well,
that?
that was the other question. Did you get a chance to chat with?
I did get a response. It was, the amount we have there is $203,937. That's the impact fees.
Okay.
And we're looking at using impact fees to pay for the cost of the floor as the increased usage of the gym has caused the floor to continue to deteriorate.
Okay. Great.
So we have the funds in place right now.
so, I think either one of the two are fine with. I am probably just based upon the submission, more comfortable with American.
Well, we didn't publicly say Danaher's floor restoration is $118,800 in their quote. American Sports Store is $138,536. American Sports Store was responding to exactly what Amber put in the RFP. Danaher gave us a quote, but whether or not they saw the RFP and they.
Yeah, I don't believe so. I think there's just a miscommunication with them.
You know they're interested.
Yeah, yes, very.
I would like to point out on American sports floors, there is a difference between the two. American sports floors, even though they're more expensive, they do state that they will reinstall bleachers and cut the bottom of the floor doors that open in. Danaher specifically says any door cutting will be the responsibility of the school. Bleacher removal and replacement and final inspection by a bleacher company, which would be an additional cost to campus. So I would say that brings it pretty much in line when you consider that.
Moving all the bleachers out, cutting the doors.
Yeah, all the fun
It's
stuff.
just another, yeah, I mean, the other thing that we're gonna have some electrical costs involved in this regardless. So Sullivan, each and every one of them, they're providing 3-phase power for the Sanders and,
Do we have 3-phase to the building?
is it a building phase power?
I think we have 3-phase. Yeah.
We've got our own generator.
The big extension cord?
Just turn on the generator.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah. It's a bigger sander.
Yeah,
I think it's like a Zamboni of Sanders.
Yeah, that's right.
So I moved to accept the proposal from American Sport.
I'll second that.
Discussion on.
It sounds like, Brian, you're the one who's dealt with them the most. Do you have a feeling just in your discussions with them?
I felt like both were very professional. I just don't know. I know these guys talked about possibly doing it in April. I don't know.
That's the Danaher? Okay.
I don't know where we're at timeline with American Sports Floor. I have not spoken to them since.
They're the ones that are booked out or were booking
They
over
were
the summer.
booked out.
Okay.
I know they are a bigger operation. When I spoke to them, he had 5 or 6 projects going on at one time. Where this Danaher is more of a family-run business, so it's smaller. You know, they do large projects, like you said. They're currently doing University of Vermont's basketball. They just finished, I guess, their basketball court. But so I mean, I just don't know what timeline, and I don't know. Again, I don't know how that fits. Like if they say, if you guys approve this and they can't do it until 2021, I don't know if you come back.
Revisit, yeah.
You revisit this and say, or we call both, and I don't know how that works.
Well, if that's
Is it
the
not?
Minutes, so I'll make a call.
if that's the case,
6:30.
Try.
will the floor last that extra year?
I mean, I think so, but yeah,
It's a
I mean,
hazard. It's a hazard.
It
was a
is.
hazard
I'm
4
just
years
asking
ago.
to look at the total picture, if we can stretch that little bit of extra time, then booking it out that far isn't as big of an issue. But if we're like, no, we need to get this done yesterday,
We've
then
had
it becomes a
holes
bigger
and-
factor.
and splitting, and the floor's a mess.
I get that.
I mean, you could amend your motion
Yeah,
to
to say that
approve pending.
that it gets done this year.
Before the start of the school year or before.
And we can, I can communicate with them and say the board has elected to,
Conditionally approved.
bid if you can provide the service
Yeah,
by end of
'cause
school year.
the scheduling during April, May sounds like they do it.
I would think that would be the time of year where they have holes in the
Yeah,
schedule.
that's what I'm thinking. If they can't do it in the summer, that's probably what they were saying, is the summers are booked.
yeah.
So the question then becomes from internal is, are you guys willing to forgo your 782 square feet of space? I think was the number I saw.
For 4 weeks.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it impacts, it would be no play, with Melissa being on maternity leave, I don't know if there's gonna be play anyway. It could impact graduation if there's any delays. But again, we're looking at, that's 8 weeks out. Yeah, so, given, and I guess just talking to our PE you're outside.
Schedule some stuff outside.
Yeah.
The good news is that when they get to come back inside, it's
Yeah.
too.
It's,
They're getting a whole new gym floor.
They're
exactly, yeah.
They're getting-
And they might be willing
So
to.
they're feeling it.
Yeah.
You could also do outside theater.
Shakespeare in the Park.
And the dog ball pit.
At the end of the document, you can make
Mad Max.
Mad Max.
Dog ball pit.
You can get a new play.
So Zach and Ken, are you interested in amending your proposal?
Yeah, so I would amend it, pending the work can be completed by October 1st of next year. That way, gives some flexibility there.
You want to do October 1st, or do you want to do some, like,
Well, that way,
at the beginning of school?
So my thought process is if Amber contacts them and says, oh, hey, we can start August 15th. You know what I'm saying? And they can start.
That gives them flexibility at the end of summer to tack it on at the end of their potentially busy season, or they do it at the beginning of their.
Just trying to be a little flexible.
But what if Donner can do it in April?
I'm more comfortable with what I'm seeing from American. So if the motion fails, we can move to the other side, but it takes motions and seconds to get things done.
Okay, so you're suggesting amending it to October 1st. Do you agree with that, or do you?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we now have a motion that states we go with American sports floors with the requirement that the work be done by October 1st of 2020. Is that correct? That's correct. Any discussion on that?
Are we voting on the amendment, or we're voting on the amendment first, right? Okay. I would, if we're gonna put the stipulation on there, I would say let's have it done by the beginning of school. I don't know, it doesn't make any sense to go into October too. So I would, if the amendment doesn't pass, I'm gonna counter amend that we're proposing we go back to like August or something. If we're playing this what if, I'd rather get it done, I think, than rather wait until October.
Any additional discussion on the amendment to have it done by October 1st? All in favor of it being amended to have the project done by October 1st?
Aye.
It's approved. Now we are back on the main question. American Sports Floor, have it done by October 1st as the chosen contractor. What are the thoughts? Yes.
The timing is on my mind. So if we're using the funds that are in the impact fee, and if this goes through right now, then basically tomorrow we can call them and say sign us up, whatever the date's going to be, as long as it's before October 1st, and then we can use that money, the funds that we have. I'm afraid that if we wait too long, we're going to lose those funds.
Yes, if they agree to our timeline.
Yeah.
They have stated in here that we have to get a 70% material payment upon order. That would create a purchase order out of our SAU, which would then be given to the town, so that the selectmen would vote to release the funds. And when the selectmen would release the funds, then the funds would come directly to American Sports Force. I believe it would get, or does it come to the school and then to?
I would say it would come to us.
It would come to you guys and then to. Okay.
I'm not sure how the withdrawal occurs. I'll have to contact the
It
town and
does
find out.
require a vote of the selectmen, and we are running up against the end of the year with selectmen meetings, and I know that the impact fees go back
When do they get, what's the deadline?
December 31st for a certain amount of money to go back.
I think you can go back at any time.
You
Can't
can,
you? Like
but,
if you hit
there-
the end of that,
Their
6 year
timeline,
or whatever it
yeah,
is.
their timeline, they're trying to do it twice a year, like June and December, to set the money back. So I already talked to the town and said we would be interested in doing this, so just giving a heads up, but it does require an action of the selectmen to release the funds.
So should the motion be pending approval of the board of selectmen?
Well, no, because we just asked for it. We've made our motion. If we vote on this, we affirm it. The only other thing is that if they come back and say we can't do it until November next year, we aren't going to have another meeting in time to approve the second vendor to get it to the selectmen before the funding We're good.
I would certainly hope that they would not provide a proposal and not be able to provide the service
We're good.
in a timely fashion.
We could also call them at a meeting in 2 or 3 days.
Okay. Just
I will
the-
call them first thing in the morning.
Okay. So that would be, so does that lay it, everybody kind of knows how the process is?
And when they're drawing or releasing the impact fees, they release the oldest first.
Yes. It gets drawn off and it works from the oldest to the newest. Any additional questions? All in favor of approving the American Sports Floors for the amount of $138,536 with the qualification that the work be done by October of 2020, say aye. Aye. Opposed? There we go. Done. Well, hold it. In motion.
Enjoy these cookies of construction. I got cookies and I got some Buckeye things. And those are delicious.
Please.
All right, next. Board reports. PTO update. Hi.
We have wrapped up our fall fundraisers. They are signed, sealed, delivered. Our next one is the Square One fundraiser with the art department, and that will be starting shortly after Christmas break. We'll be selling spirit sticks at school lunches, I think 1 Friday a month. And triathlon planning will start in January.
And the triathlon is in June, or?
Triathlon will probably be July or August.
Okay.
Then August.
Any questions for the PTO? Oh, yeah. Almost. Almost got away. Those are delicious.
No,
Yeah,
Actually, I think it's a 8th grade, the middle grade. That's
That's
an
the
8th
eighth
grade.
grade.
Concord High School report. I did get an email from the Concord High School kids that basketball tryouts were tonight, and they were unable to make it. So sorry, they said they'd come next time. Staff report. Is there a staff report tonight? Executive board report. We have not had one. Did I do your report on the last executive board meeting? Very brief. I think in our last
I believe
meeting.
you did.
I think I did. It all becomes a blur. Principal's report.
All right, this covers November 7th through today, December 4th. This past month, our class of the week visits have continued. Ms. Tattle's class was class of the week. Mrs. Prater, Mrs. Rupi, and Mrs. Audley this past month. Mrs. Audley is this week, actually. She unfortunately lost 2 days because of the snow. Basketball has begun. Both boys and girls have an A and a B team. Their first game was supposed to be today, but it was canceled and rescheduled for January. So their first game will actually be tomorrow against Nottingham. So the girls play here and the boys go to Nottingham. I think that's, if I remember correctly. We had our breakfast and assembly for the veterans. It was very well attended, and as usual was a wonderful event. Our 7th graders did a wonderful job hosting. Mr. Flad, Mrs. Gordon, Mrs. Goodrich Bundy, and Mrs. Mostu were very involved in helping to organize it. Mrs. Bundy and Mrs. Mostu, being our 2 newest members, jumped right on board and really did a nice job getting the kids helping out. Also, Mrs. Shute came back that day. Mrs. Gordon had attended ironically, a professional development day that day. So Mrs. Shute was able to be here on that day, volunteering and subbing. So she was able to be part of the event. That's always a big deal here.
Big shout out to the band as well for the assembly, how amazing the band
Awesome.
was. It was really, really good.
The band was awesome. Yes, they were. And I will let Mr. Trong know that.
Was the advanced band, all the bands, the medium, the intermediate band,
They were the advanced
band?
band. 7th and 8th grade. So our book fair this year, for the first time, the first grade shared it with 5th grade. They decided to combine efforts because they both are fundraising for their Boston trip, so they both participated this year. Also this month, Mr. Ferdinand had a writer's celebration, and first grade also had a writing celebration on November 13th and November 22nd, respectively. First grade bedtime story hour happened on Thursday, November 14th. Mr. Grieve, big shout out to Mr. Grieve, who set up the gym like a castle. He even had Mr. Juicy Dragon visit.
Very grateful
Oh,
for bringing them out
the
again.
name brought him out. She was just beautiful. Sitting there, rounding the bend, watching all the kids. It was great. It was really great. It is so cool. And she's still so cool. Really. Our preschool had their harvest party this past month. We had our monthly all-school meeting on Monday, November 18th. Our sixth graders hosted this past month's all-school meeting. The odd grades got to share this month during the all-school meeting, and the sixth graders for the group activity taught the whole school the song and the body movement actions to a song that they learned in humanities about ancient civilization called GRAPES, which stands for Geography, Religion, Achievement, Politics, Economics, and Social Structure. And the whole school was singing the song. It was very cute. And the 7th and 8th graders, of course, remembered the song from when they were in 6th grade because they've learned it. Right, Freddie, do you want to sing for us?
I feel like you should do it on this.
I know.
So in geography would go like this.
Yeah, geography.
And then religion would be like this, and then politics would be like, as in like you're reading something, and then economics. I don't remember what that was. Politics, economics, social structure. We did like this. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so. Achievement? Did you do achievement?
Yeah.
Yeah. We did them all.
Something I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It was a lot of fun. The kids really enjoyed it. We had the projector up so they could see the song, was the YouTube video, and the actions and the words were up there. So we had an SAU leadership meeting where the leadership got together at Pembroke Academy. The topic for this past month was the Innovation Academy at Pembroke Academy, which is kind of like a STEM, but beyond that, more of a hands-on, I don't know, how do I describe it? Inquiry-based, project-based. They were talking about an ed cafe. They had a couple of students there and teachers that had participated, and it was very interesting. And the students were very, very excited to share the information that they had about their the Innovation Academy, which is starting. It's going on this year. They're piloting it this year, but
in pockets,
Yeah.
Teachers are learning to teach that way and do inquiry-based instruction, a lot of group work.
yeah. The kids had a lot of great things to say about the program. Our third graders went on a field trip to Mount Kearsarge Indian Museum, and our student council I met with them right before vacation. They always have a couple of priorities that they want to present to administration to see if they can move it forward. Our student council this year would like to start a tutoring program during core and more, which we're going to talk to the 7th and 8th grade team tomorrow about how to move that forward. They are also interested in an honor roll, so we'll have a discussion about that. I know the honor roll has come up, and it's difficult with competency-based education and competency-based grading, but they did bring that up as something that they were a priority that they had, and a wish that they had was to have a student-run drama program that Brian and I talked about. Maybe we could tie in with our after-school enrichment if there was a way that we could tie that in. So we're looking into those three things for our student council. Our 5th grade did their calendar unveiling, as you can see hanging behind you. They're very excited to present their calendars and start selling them. They have not hit me up yet, but they will, I am positive. Have they hit you up yet?
Not yet.
My daughter shut down every family member. I think she sold like 15 of them.
Good for her. Happy Thanksgiving. Our middle schoolers had a pep rally. As you know, one of our goals this year is defining middle school in a K-8 building. And so we had a pep rally right before Thanksgiving on Tuesday, November 26th. We had a volleyball game of staff versus student. Of course, the students won because they're good. And the staff was like jumping and falling all over the place. It was very embarrassing, and we're not going to blame the floor for that. They also the kids, we played the 12 minutes of a volleyball game, and then at halftime played a version of Hungry Hungry Hippos. I don't know if you've seen the videos that have circulated where humans like roll out on a little scooter or something, and they have a basket, and they have to collect as many balls as they can, and then they pull the scooter back in, and then the next person gets on, and oh gosh, the kids just loved it. A lot of energy. You could hear them throughout the entire school, right? Oh, you were in there.
It was so much fun.
It was so much fun. It was so great. The enthusiasm was wonderful. And then we had a wonderful Thanksgiving break with 2 snow days. And I just wanted to clarify the process for snow days. I guess there was some question of why Mrs. Withy would have 2 snow days back to back. It was circulating around because, Mrs. Withy, I know, it was nice as it was to put my feet up for another day. But just so for clarification, I am in touch with Patty by 4:30 in the morning. We are in touch with the road agent, who is basically the one, and really is the one that makes the decision. He's the one who says, "Nah, the roads look as bad today as they did yesterday. The storm is going until noon." I'm in touch with Kelly at Dale Transportation. This is all happening literally between 4 and 4:30 a.m. So.
And the entire SAU is talking, superintendents are talking, Peter and I are talking, and I think sometimes it's worth mentioning what the public doesn't know is talking to the road agent is critical, because there have been times when he said, "I've got 2 trucks broken down. I can't have the roads ready," and if that's the case, we're not having school. And there may be times maybe we can do a better job of getting that word out if there are special circumstances, but it's absolutely a collaborative effort, and the decision is always made based on safety of the students.
Of course, absolutely.
We do the best we can with the information we have.
Mark did say, the road agent did say, but if the storm is stopping at noon, I will need at least 4 hours to clear the roads in Deerfield. So it's a big job, obviously. Deerfield is location. Deerfield is a special little pocket, and even though Epsom and Chichester, those towns seem to be okay, Deerfield wasn't. So I really have to take. I'm in Hooksett, New Hampshire. I have no idea what's happening in Deerfield, New Hampshire. So just wanted to throw that out there. And then lastly, we had our PD Wednesday today. We were able to, our curriculum committees were able to get together. Last time they got together in June, I believe, was the last time they met. So this was the first time this year that they were able to regroup with each other. All the different committees got together and kept notes and sent them to them. And so we have them as to what the discussion was about. So, and that's all I have with my pom-poms.
Excellent. Curriculum Review Board, did you have a meeting?
We did. We met a couple weeks ago, and it was mostly a meeting of updates of the different committees and what they're working on. The curriculum this year is the PE curriculum. I think we agreed to push the social studies curriculum back 1 year. So it's just the PE. So there's not a, in terms of, in previous years we've had readers and trying to get through and look at and approve a bunch of curricula before moving it onto the board. This is just one, so it's not as busy a year as it has been in previous years. Anything else that I missed? Those are the key things.
Okay. Then we are on to fiscal year 2021 and 2021 budget. We had a number of questions and requests from last time, so take it away.
So before Amber starts, I just want to point out that we did get you the special ed figures. Amber put together in pretty quick order. Thank you, Amber.
You're welcome.
Since I think 14, 15, the special ed budgets, and then the actuals, and with the differences in those numbers, you're interested in seeing that. And then we have the most updated enrollment numbers. And then somebody asked for a copy of the trust balances. Those. copies of the draft if you want, because really it's just filling in numbers if you decide on any of those tonight. I think I only made 5 of the trust.
Thank you.
And I think that was it in terms of information other than what Amber has for you in the budget.
Yep, I'll start with, you had, I believe you had requested what the one teacher would cost.
Yeah.
So that would be $75,323. That's,
So, and that came out, one teacher came out with this.
yeah, that one teacher came out, yep.
So I
It
think,
was, sorry, it was 83,000 last
Yeah,
Well,
meeting.
I did this, I just did when I was here, because I'll be honest, I
Okay.
missed it. So this doesn't include the fringe piece. It does include health, dental, and salary.
Okay.
So it's probably about 10 grand in fringe,
Oh,
makes
okay.
about sense.
So about 83. Okay, great.
so a question, I think, the big question we were kicking around last meeting was, did this proposed budget, were we plus 2 staff members, was that the proposal, or was it because we have the retirees, were we only plus 1?
We added 2.
Yeah, so to clear that up, we
yes.
did this.
I could use one too.
So, sorry, so I apologize for last meeting, having all these numbers in our head with different teachers. So, this is essentially what we were, the proposed list is originally what we presented to you guys last, 2 weeks ago. And, that was essentially our ultimate, like, what we wanted to have, when you guys say, come to us with everything you want. So that would have, the proposed list 2 weeks ago was 31 teachers. That would have counted for 4 kindergartens and for 4 second grades. So that's where the confusion was in my brain, so I apologize for that. So where we're at right now, by cutting 1 teacher out, we are still able to meet our goal of making middle school teaming. And you'll see next to the 3 kindergarten, there's an asterisk, and next to the 4 second grade. So that is essentially, we would have to look at our numbers and determine where we would put that 4th teacher. So if we have 55 below, something around that range for incoming kindergartens, we would probably most likely keep 3 kindergartens and move that, carry that current 1st grade to 4 second grades. If we have 75 incoming kindergartners, then we move that 4th teacher down to kindergarten, and we have 21-ish students in 2nd grade.
So we, at the last meeting, went from 2 to 1,
Right.
like new staff members.
Correct.
So that's
So
now
that
reflected.
that would be the.
This proposal reflects only 1 new one now instead of
1
2.
new staff members.
Correct.
But that's keeping,
So 29 was, if we didn't add any staff members, it'd be 29.
Correct.
so that would be no reduction in staff, no change in staff, just possibly change in personnel.
Right,
kind of
exactly.
whatnot, but-
Yeah.
Okay. And so 31 was the original request,
Right, that was like,
and 30
that would
is,
allow us to have the 4 kindergartens and the 4 second grades.
at the moment, we're at 30.
Correct.
Okay.
So, the changes, there were minimal changes. On page 3, you'll notice on line 13, that's where I took the teacher out of. And then, on line 31 is the high school tuition. The enrollment didn't change, but we did get the final cost of what Co-Brown would be. So that's been accurately reflected, so there was an increase in that. That went up
Yeah, so
pretty
that's,
significantly.
yeah, it's worth mentioning that it's 17,298 for Co-Brown next year, and Concord's, yeah.
Right, and it was previously, Co-Brown was 16,177, so.
Any explanation for the,
$1,000 jump.
They send the breakdown, just their budget's up. They don't specifically say why. They just send the breakdown of how they arrived at that number.
But they can also set whatever number they like, because they're part of.
because it's the way it is?
Yeah, I mean,
Any questions any other questions on page 3?
Nope.
I did not make any changes on page 4, 5, 4 or 5, On page 6, there were some special ed changes, so those are reflected in those lines, on lines 130, 136, and 138.
So if we, while we're in special ed, if we can just talk about that a little bit, we had a conversation with Karen, and Karen met with Lisa, and I had let Karen know that there was a discussion about cutting some funds and then relying on the trust fund. So before we made that decision, I asked her to sit down with Lisa and go through again the roster very carefully of both students that we have here and students we have at Concord High School. So they did, I said, let's not put in the budget the what ifs. Let's put, this is what we know, and then if something else happens, then we can take it from the trust if need be. So there were a few instances where we haven't been able to fill some behavior specialist time. So, okay, if we haven't been able to fill that time, then let's just take it out and deal with it as it comes if we end up filling it in the future. We had a student that we're kind of on the fence with, like, oh, we think this is going to end up happening. Can't get specific, but then it's, well, okay, we think, but maybe not, then let's take that out. Let's not put that in. So we tried to have those hard discussions and really tighten things up, knowing that if we have the trust and we need to draw on it, we can. We also they went through the Concord High list very carefully, and we talked about students individually, and did we see some students that might be able to cut back on services next year? Can we relook at the 8th graders, and even though they're getting services here, maybe they won't need that extensive services to get to Concord. So they did all that really nitty-gritty work, and I think they were able to cut
A good amount. It was like 100, was it like, I want to say it was 123 or something like that?
And feel okay about it. So,
Great.
yeah, that's how we did it.
Great. Thank you.
Page 7, I had no changes, none on 8, none on 9. On page 10, on line 288, do you want to talk about that
Sure.
line?
So, we've been made aware that network technicians are not salary exempt individuals. So we have to put all of our network technicians in the SAU on hourly contracts. That could prove to be very difficult considering the number of hours they tend to put in. So we're going to have conversations with all of those employees and make sure that we're kind of clocking their time on whatever it ends up being, 7:30 to 3:30, and then they need to be able to get done what they can. And if there's a special project or a server that has to be replaced, Amber added in 3,000, I think it was 3,000
Yes.
in some overtime money, so that if there are things that come up that can't be done during the school, or projects that things happen, and Bob has to come in and fix them or what have you, we put a little bit of a buffer in there. So next year that will be an adjustment, and it will be a trial period, and we'll see how it goes.
Why was that change from salary to hourly?
Well, we asked Amber to contact the Department of Labor, and get a better description of what qualifies. And when we really looked at administrators versus technicians, they don't supervise people, which is probably the biggest factor. It's questionable in terms of, they're not making really any independent decisions. They are still reporting to someone. So we felt like they really did not meet the qualifications, and that once we had that information, we can't continue to.
Yeah, they look at I read through a bunch of information as well. Really, when they look at more of the salary side of it, it's more of like the analytical, doing all the analytics, not the networking, the software, all of that, which is typically most of what all of our technicians do. And so that's what disqualifies them for being salaried employees.
Yeah, so you redid the job. Yeah, I'm with it.
Page 11 is on line 351. That's the special ed change we just talked about. On page 12, you'll see a bunch of yellow going on here. And that's mostly one because we've taken the position out. And I don't remember off the top of my head whether I gave you the health benefit last time or not. So let me just check that. I don't think I had it. I may not have. they all seem to blend together after a while. I did have it actually on November 20th. So that all the changes you're seeing in yellow on page 12 are a reduction in that position. Other than line 377 where the pool of increases.
Yeah, we can talk about that in non-public, but I did ask Amber to just put an amount in your budget so that you could see a closer bottom line of where we actually stood, but we can certainly adjust that if you so choose.
Yeah, I've added in any retirement that I was aware of. On page 13, there's a change in line 413, and that would be for the same reason, for the increase in food service for the potential increase that you may give the employees.
Food service seems to be doing well this year.
I am feeling confident that it's going in the right direction.
Are there any questions or?
So I think we've gone after the very easy low-hanging fruit. We've eliminated the potential for an A+. We did that weeks ago. We trimmed the one request for a teacher. Another conversation, and I don't know that it would bear fruit to have it, would be to, and maybe this is the bigger picture. Right now, we're $200,000 in default proposed. So do we put the budget in that has everything in it out to the voters and let them have at it, knowing if it's a default, it's a default, or do we try to trim it down so that our proposed budget we think is the passable amount? You give the voters the wants and the needs and let them decide, and this is a big picture, but or do you try to give them the budget you can pass? Either way, you get something extra, so we'll extend.
Personally, I don't have any changes I want to make to this. I feel like, thank you for the special ed folks for really sharpening the pencil. So basically my thought with working with the trust fund is you guys have kind of taken that off the table.
Mm-hmm.
So that the buffer is still there. It provides, this lets us move forward as a school in terms of changing the structure of the middle school to reflect what you guys want it to be. And it addresses pretty much everything else you guys want. I don't have a problem. Does anybody else have any changes or anything they would like to?
No, I agree, and I can't imagine we're gonna get too much more blood from this particular stone, so.
My only thought is about that teacher that we pulled at the last round.
Yep.
That, I guess my thought is do you kick it off to the voters with
the extra teacher in it?
the extra teacher in there?
Well,
And I guess partially different to it.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that the difficulty with that, or I think the dilemma is you can't give them three, right? So it's either a bigger budget with that extra teacher versus default, or you leave that teacher out, and it's still a couple hundred higher than the default, so we just, that's.
Yeah, and of that couple hundred, the increase from this year over last year, a huge portion of that's going to be attributable to the contract that the voters passed. So the binder's going to have a copy of that contract, but I think we talked last week. I don't remember what the first year impact was.
It's like 160.
Was year one's impact? Does that sound right?
Can't remember it off the top of my head. It was over 100.
Okay, so I mean, a third to half of what we're discussing was passed by the voters.
Mm-hmm.
On you go.
That's gonna be communicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll communicate with the NBC, but, you know, for the voters is.
And the tuition was another piece.
Yeah.
Tuition was another large increase in there.
Tuition, health
That was
insurance.
200,000 there.
So, I mean, it's in very, year after year, our budgets come in, and they are fairly flat to a certain extent.
Mhm.
Those increases are salaries and benefits, and, you know, there's not a whole lot we can do.
I mean, if
Just
you really, if you look through all the lines, there's either a decrease or flat. It's really a no frills
And we're
budget.
not losing students. Right, the school's not losing students. So, the question I'll have around your additional teacher is that teacher was, in some ways, kind of, because we don't know what's coming to kindergarten. It's kind of like a safety. You know, you figure, what's the magic number? You know, is it 60? Is it 65? At what point do you really want to see it break into 4 classes? This year we're in the 50s, right? The high 50s? And that's working fine.
Yeah. Yeah, our I think if you talk to the kindergarten teachers, I think like 58, 60 is definitely
Kind of the breaking
they've
point.
had a breaking point. So, and right now our preschool numbers are not any higher than they were last year at this time. So, but as I said, you know, I think we're comfortable with the 30 teachers. It was just looking at the bigger picture, like, you know, like if it gets in, then maybe we use it, maybe we don't. You know, but it's hard to say. We don't even know until, you know, August 1st. Like, what our
Here's my
numbers are.
child.
So, I mean, we were in that situation quite a few years ago where we rolled into
8 or 9 kids, I remember.
Yeah.
8 or 9 kids showed up.
right at the end of August.
Right, it was a
So,
surprise.
So,
yeah.
I think the question I would throw to, well, 3 of you is, do you want us to present a budget with that position in it? What's your opinion? Would you rather we take a swing at a budget with that position in it, maybe not need it? Or would you rather be a little more conservative and
Are you saying the 30th or the 31st position or the 30th?
The 31st.
You're talking about putting it back in?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just, this is,
I just want to clarify.
yeah.
I'm just watching Amber's expression because she's probably you told her.
I'm not going to say anything. It's not for me to
Clearly,
say.
because she just did all this work to pull it out.
I don't. That doesn't
I feel
matter.
like as a leadership team that we talked this through last Friday, and that we are all, of the 3 of us are on the same page, that we are comfortable with it.
Alright, so then I'll move the budget at $14,394,363.00.
I will second. Any discussion? Mr. Oxnard.
So when we do and go and present this and defend this to the voters, the things that we're seeing as changes are, it looks like our middle school numbers are up by 20, which means an extra teacher makes sense from that perspective. As part of your conversation, the breaking into teams philosophically makes more sense than what we've been doing. So I can support that. Special ed numbers are up. We did add a special ed case manager last spring, so this is now 2 more teachers than last year at this time. So we're adding 2 teachers.
I don't know if that teacher was in the budget though. Did we just have to add it because we needed it, or did we budget for it?
I don't think we
had
budgeted
to
for a
add
new,
it, yeah.
so we added
So
a teacher.
that looks like an addition, but we had already done it, out of the prior appropriations. You know what I mean?
No, say that again.
I don't think we budgeted for it, but I think we had to hire the position out of necessity, so it's going to look like a higher budgeted amount. Because
Right.
it wasn't in the prior budget.
But there are 2 more teachers. We're proposing 2 more teachers now in this budget than we were proposing a year ago at this time.
Yeah, I understand, okay, yeah.
So if this goes through, there's 2 more teachers here than there were a year ago. But there's only, as far as we can tell, we're not sure how many more kids there are. At this moment, it looks like there's 20 more kids in middle school, but we are waiting to see the numbers in kindergarten. And the only other point I wanted to make was that it's a little bit tricky to be saying at the same time that we need to build a building because we don't have enough space. yet apparently we have space for another teaching room. So that's something that you will be asked about at the MDC, we will be asked about at the deliberative session that we'll need to be able to explain. And that's the only other piece that I would, I guess, maybe like to hear more about is how.
Well, we're going from 4 teachers in 8th grade down to 3 teachers
Okay.
for 7th grade.
Okay.
So you're shuffling space. 'Cause
Yeah.
that was gonna be
Right.
that was gonna be my question too. Was
Yeah, we're not.
There's no additional cost,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we're just, the 5th grade, we're moving a larger number into the middle school,
Yeah.
which, it frees up a room, but that's not to say, next, with this current, 6th grade, current, 1st grade, how far their needs will be to carry them through, because they are, like I said, they break down to 21 or 22 kids per class,
Right.
So to say that we don't need space, I totally disagree.
We still have 2 modules out back,
And we still,
and those will be filled next year.
And the 8th grade class that is leaving is the smallest class in the school.
Yeah.
Right.
So the kindergarten class that's coming in is much more likely to be a larger class, which means an increase in student population.
Right.
And we can't lose sight of the special ed needs and the programming needs that we don't have everybody in corners and cupboards and
Offices.
offices.
and we still don't have, I mean, we're not even accounting for a wellness classroom right now. He's currently using the cafeteria for.
Right.
child
And
visits.
that's going to continue next year with this proposal.
Correct, yeah.
Any additional discussion on the budget?
A follow-up question. This sheet shows 534 as the total enrollment. In my head, I thought the number was 556, but wasn't it 550 last year?
546.
We were 540 something last year.
546.
We did go down a little bit this year.
So that, that was we had a big increase last year.
Maybe about 60?
Yeah, I think we were 58 or 60, we're right around 60.
And the current 8th grade is in low 40s.
There's a pretty good transition.
42.
Can I have one more question?
Sure.
There has been an increase, correct me if I'm wrong, there has been an increase in funding from the state.
Article C8.
Can you tell us
We
about
have the
that?
revenue sheet in here and it's gonna go over with you.
That's next.
Yeah, we can move to that.
Well, we're in the middle of the motion.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
we
fine. We'll
cannot
finish
move
this.
to that.
Okay. All right,
Already.
but there is an increase in state funding.
There is, yes.
We'll see how big it is in a minute.
Sure.
Any additional discussion on the budget being moved? All in favor? Opposed? There we go. Now we can talk about additional funding.
So on page 28 is the breakdown of revenue. So what Nate was talking about was the new biennium budget realigned the adequacy aid for the next 2 years, this current fiscal year and next fiscal year. And so with that said, there's a couple things. They have a grant that they've embedded within the adequacy aid that gives a little bit extra funding. There's no longer the Keno money, the kindergarten aid, which is now also embedded inside the adequacy aid. So when you look at your sheet on the sheet, you're going to see kindergarten aid. I have nothing estimated. You are getting kindergarten funding. It's just not separate funding outside of adequacy aid moving forward. With that said, Deerfield will receive an additional $146,000, almost $147,000 worth of additional adequacy aid for next year.
Okay. We didn't open that much.
Some, depending on the districts, the stabilization was much larger than some of the others. Deerfield wasn't one of the larger ones, unfortunately for Deerfield. But there are some districts that received a significant amount of money.
And so the money that was in this year is part of the state's budget?
Yep, that went back to defray taxes.
Okay, so that money, already, was that part of that fund balance that we sent back to the town already?
No, that was actually additional. So when it's not actually, it's appropriation basically is what it is. So when they did the adequacy aid amount, I do my piece that includes your surplus and the revenue we're estimating, and then the Department of Revenue takes what adequacy aid they're receiving from the Department of Ed, and then they come up with that tax rate. So it defrays like in the background.
So we never saw it, it just was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't real money.
It's appropriation.
Girls' money.
Yes.
I think that's been the frustrating part for all of us. So we've had a lot of conversations as leadership around the state that, you know, they're talking about that they're going to adequately fund education, yet the money doesn't come to us. It doesn't.
Never goes to education.
It just comes
Right.
in as revenue to offset taxes. So, yes, it's helping the town fund the budget that we have, but it's not additional funds for us to expend.
And it came rather quickly. I mean, the budget was, you know, approved. We received the budget on, I think it was like September 26th. Tax rates typically are set the first week of October. You'll notice your tax rate did not get set till significantly later period of time. Not just Deerfield, but really the entire state. I was watching the entire time because I was so excited that all of our stuff was in by September 1st, and we still didn't get a tax rate set until really late. I think that because my assumption is because that budget took so long to pass, that there was a lot of work that the Department of Education and the Department of Revenue had to do. So I think it delayed the taxes from being set. So the time frame of really finding out about what this money was actually going to be and what your tax was set was a very small amount of time.
And it was about 150,000.
For what?
That money that we get, this year's adequacy aid, the increase in adequacy aid from.
I'll be honest, I do not remember off the top of my head, but I will get you that exact figure.
Because it's just curious.
I will get that for you. I should have looked that up.
If you can embed it in the packet of stuff that NBC, because that's a question that's going to
What I can give, so I create something that looks exactly like this during tax rate setting.
Yeah.
So I can give you that sheet and I'll label it tax rate setting so that you can see the difference, and it's in the same format, so it shouldn't confuse them.
And correct me if I'm wrong, did this come from that suit that was settled last year, or this is a separate?
No,
this is separate from
that's
that
separate.
suit?
It's just the state budget passed.
It's just the state
The
budget.
lawsuit's still going on
Okay. Okay.
They won.
with those districts. Right?
Is it appealed now by the state?
I don't know, and it's not finished. I don't know where it's at, but it's not finished.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, and the put a note here was 100.
Oh, did I?
No, I'm sorry, that was 121.
Oh, I was gonna say I don't remember doing that.
Okay.
No, she was just pointing out the revenue, that was because of, things.
What the
Yeah,
actual increase in revenue is.
1920 return, yeah.
It makes it look like if you look at the sheet, it makes it look like you lost revenue, when in fact you haven't. It's because it's taking into consideration the surplus and the trust funds.
710,000 and the.
So your additional revenue in totality that we're anticipating you receiving next year is $113,229.
Are you sticking around for the rest of the meeting?
I can.
You're
I-
welcome to.
I just want to mention one other thing.
If you want
Medicaid, in case somebody asked, Medicaid, you'll notice that I did not budget anything for it. That's because we're still under the emergency rule that we talked about earlier in the year. I know we talked about it at the executive board meeting. And so
That was confusing.
it's very confusing. I don't even feel capable to fully explain it without confusing you further.
I can do it if you want me to.
Yeah, if you could.
So right now, the emergency rule, there was a big push to have an increase in help for mental health services, and that's all well and good, but in order to do that, it had to come from somewhere, and right now, the emergency rules in effect require a doctor to refer special ed services that occur in an educational setting, which makes no sense. So the licensed practitioners that prior had been able to refer services, so an occupational therapist licensed by the Board of Allied Health would say, write out a referral. Yes, this student needs 30 minutes a week of OT, and we could put in for reimbursement. Now they're saying, no, that a doctor needs to say that they need OT in the school. So we don't have doctors on special ed teams, so you're either going to hire a doctor, even if the doctor would do that, to say that a student needs occupational therapy or speech therapy in a school setting. So it's, we have, no schools are putting in claims because we don't have doctors, at our service to tell us what they think should happen in the school setting. So it's obviously created quite a stir in the state and people are working on it, but for right now, we don't know if it's gonna change, so.
Yeah. So I didn't want to anticipate anything. I'd rather it be unanticipated and it be a little bit extra should something come in than us estimate for something and then we have to worry about that shortfall. So I just wanted to make a note of that because that is a change. That's occurring. It's going to affect this year as well. We did receive a little bit in the beginning of the year. But other than that, I'm not anticipating receiving anything else.
Do you want to talk about the warrant articles while Amber's here?
Yes.
I can
And
stay
also
right to
just,
the end.
my question before we left was where we are currently for this year, not for the next year.
A year to date?
Yeah. Do you know that?
I do not have it, but I can run that for you. I apologize.
That's okay.
I'll get that for you. I'll get that and put it in the drive by early next week. Does that work?
Yep. Warrant articles.
Okay, so we have our operating budget. We'll have a warrant article for the para contract, which you're gonna ratify at the end of this meeting, hopefully. We need to discuss, I gave you the trust fund balances. So you need to look at if you wanna add money to facilities repair, the equipment. Kathy drafted just a sentence as a placeholder that I will need to get some legal input on, but right now it just says to contract with an architect to begin the design process. So I'm sure that's not the actual language we'll use, but that was something that you had considered, and Amanda, I reached out to her from North Branch, and she, by the end of the week, is gonna have hopefully a figure that we can use for the warrant. So we don't have it yet, but it's not, the warrants aren't due to the NBC yet.
Okay, so we have two, a contract and a budget. Do you wanna talk about seating any of these additional trusts?
Well, we have worked on funding the facilities repair trust the last couple of years. And we have a decent balance in that right now. I think we're getting to the point, did we have 75,000 last year?
In facilities, yes.
Okay, so we should probably hear from administration and Mike soon on what the plan is for what's gonna get done this year for the money that was given to us. And have a good sense of where we are in the process of updating things. Do we want to kind of continue that pattern of funding that?
We drew quite a bit of money out for the lighting project, but we're not,
That's from last year, though.
is that the 49,000 that was in? Okay.
Yes.
And we don't have the CIP in front of us. Was there anything in the first year that we were going to use?
We have to
funds
address a
for?
roof at some point, as that's
The athletic field.
Yeah, I think the athletic field, my thought is you sit on that until we figure out what we're gonna do with the building project.
But we talked about doing the septic and the athletic field at the same time, when we were talking about the CIP.
But you don't wanna do that until you know what you're doing from a building
Physical
standpoint.
structure.
I feel the same way about the roof.
Well, no, the roof, this building's not going anywhere, it needs a roof no matter what.
But why put a new roof on if we're gonna cut into it by putting an addition?
I don't know that you'd be cutting into it to the extent where you'd be unable to do.
You don't know.
Before we get into CIP
I know that's
and huge projects,
Yeah.
there was the engineering study, which is kind of where we were working off of with this fund. And I think that one of the next things we were doing with the heating units throughout the building, we were gonna talk about that, the bathrooms and things like that, or the things that we were dealing with through this funding, which didn't qualify necessarily individually for the CIP, but cumulatively were very expensive.
So I think what I would say then is possibly at our next meeting, maybe, what I'd wanna do is I just wanna review what the, cause we did one game bathroom last year that went smoothly and is done and everybody, you guys are happy and new and fresh and so on and so forth. And that leaves 3 that are undone at the moment. So if we could re-estimate what the last one cost and kind of attach that to what it would cost to do the next 3, those are the items that I think we want to look at because that was working our way through.
And I think the heating units were pretty far up the chain in terms of something that needed to be addressed.
There's the secondary side of that is we need to get somebody in here to give us an estimate on that replacement cost.
Right, but before we get in the weeds on all of this stuff, do we want to consider having a warrant article on continuing that process, the engineering process?
I think we're asking for a lot of money as it is, and I would be willing to hold off on those other items on the warrant, and kind of look at it as if we take the long view and look at this potential addition as a big bond. We did have this conversation a number of months ago where we're gonna if it goes through, we're gonna make some new addition, but we could also include in that repairs and updates on the building, and so all of these things could be rolled into some sort of a bond, and they wouldn't be on the order of millions. They'd be whatever, a few thousand or whatever it is. But I think it might make sense to lay the groundwork for, focus on that, and maybe make sure we get, if we don't over ask for items, maybe that increases the chance of the engineering study going through, given that we're also asking for an extra $500,000 in the main budget. So with all those things, I'd be willing just to hold off on those items, and we've also talked about in the past, trying to come up with language about the high school situation, and trying to get a feel on, when we have all the voters right there, can we have some sort of a kind of almost a poll sort of thing that would be on the warrant that we could use to get a feel for what people think.
Ask the question, there would be.
I don't know, but that's just sort of, in a broad sense.
Yeah, that's.
No.
I hear what you're saying. So we have one board member who is not interested in funding any of these trusts. Is that what I'm hearing?
Not right now.
Okay.
We're going to ask for a lot of funding in about 3 or 4 years.
Are there other board members who feel the same way?
So, from a project standpoint, there's enough money currently, or there will be because there's another 75 going in July, in the facilities trust fund to fund another year's worth of projects and still leave a large enough reserve to take care of any emergency type of items. So, I'm comfortable waiting a year if that's what the rest of the board is. And I don't think it prevents us from moving forward with knocking that project, so it's just a matter of, we'll run the number down a little bit, and we'll get a little closer to that number we've had that we wanted to kind of hang out in 1 year, which is about the value of it.
Did you say there's going to be another 75,000 in July?
It's on,
No, it's on here.
yeah.
No, I'm sorry, yeah, but that 4-year, $388,000 total is coming from.
That's where we're
But it
at.
already happened.
It's already
I'm sorry,
accounted
I'm
for.
sorry.
There,
You wouldn't have more unless you
Right.
put it in.
No.
The next July would be this one.
1920, I apologize.
that's okay. I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
no. So the current balance is at 388.
Yes.
60.
Yes,
Yeah, sorry.
that's okay. I just didn't want you to be anticipating more.
It came
So
out, I'm saying it's something to
We set up the equipment installation trust last year
Mhm.
and put 25,000. We have not drawn off that. That was specific to non-repair, to new equipment. And we ran into that with the kiln. Is there any expected expenditures out of that fund this year?
I was gonna check with Mike, but I have not heard of any big equipment issues right now.
No, the only thing possibly could be the elevator to the
That's not,
That's
qualified as new or
No,
not?
not new, right? Okay.
kiln wouldn't have been.
Because of the whole venting system, it was a different system. I guess it didn't qualify, because we asked the trustees of the trust fund to use, and they said no.
Oh, it doesn't say, it doesn't say new though. An equipment and installation expendable trust fund for the purpose of purchasing and installing equipment. So it doesn't say it's new.
So maybe you could use it for.
Oh, because the other one is repair specific,
Right.
so it wasn't repair. Okay. So does anybody feel like we need money in that one?
No, not specifically that one. I would prefer to see some funding go into these trusts from surplus only. I don't think they need to ask for more. I get Nate's point about the optics of asking for an increase to the budget. Oh, and by the way, give us more money to put it in the trust. I just wonder if we, even if we do specify that it's from surplus only, if it's going to be misinterpreted by the voters that we are asking for more money, because we specifically have it on the as a warrant article. Even though, we've, in the last couple of years, we put it in a nice black bold font at the bottom saying no new appropriation. I just think if we have the surplus money, we ought to sock it away, if possible, to continue to grow these funds.
Well, that begs the question of the conversation we had earlier tonight about the special education. We haven't funded that we haven't funded it in years. It's been around 200,000 in just earning interest. That seems to be the largest variable that the school faces on an annual basis. If we asked for surplus to go into that, to mitigate the variation due to whatever comes through the door, it might create a situation going forward that allows for a more level consistency in terms of impact to the budget. If we made it clear to the administration that they can draw off of that as needed, and it's there and fund it to put another 50 or 100 grand in that.
But it still is a backup. It's not.
It is a backup. However, it can be, as Patty was saying, you can account for it within the budget.
Right. But on top of that, we have the other 190,000 as a backup that we didn't give back to the voters.
That backup is that's a really bad backup.
That backup only comes into play if you have a deficit appropriation. So it's meaning you have no money. And not just no money in your budget, but I believe that they will also look to see if you have any assets, meaning do you have a trust fund you can
So
withdraw?
you gotta stop saying you gotta say the school.
The school withdraws. They will look for those items first.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not truly in an emergency.
Right.
The chances of coming to actually utilizing those funds, something could, a catastrophe would have to happen.
So I have a hard time with saying let's put more money in the special education trust, and we're never drawing any money off the special education budget. So I get like the concept of let's pad this and run tighter here, but not once have we ever had to go and touch that trust. So that 215 grand has served well as a cushion or a barrier to protect the budget to a certain extent, potentially, but not once have we gone on it. To the extent of what Jim and kind of talking about, I don't think we need to add money. So I kind of agree with me this year. I don't think we need to add money this year. But another question is, at some point, do we look at possibly adding, and I'm not just talking, so I do that. Do you add another trust or try to establish another trust for actually starting to put money aside for a building so that you say, okay, you know what, instead of this and this and this and bonding out X amount of dollars, why don't we say, you know what?
Start saving.
$400,000, let's just go big for future building expansion at DCS. And if you did that for 2 or 3 years, out of surplus only, suddenly you've got a fairly sizable chunk, and then the number is irrelevant.
Which makes it more palatable than you have to go.
It also is a great litmus test of the voters. How committed are they to this? There's X amount of dollars, put it aside.
Right.
Following year, how committed are you? Here's X amount of dollars.
Well,
put it aside.
it also shows that we are thinking, we are serious about doing it rather than just talking about doing it. We're serious about doing it, and we're trying to plan ahead to do it. So I like, if we're gonna take money from, if we're gonna specify or ask the permission to take the money from whatever surplus comes out, I think that's a great idea, is putting it in the trust for building expansion.
The other thing is to create a trust that's 2/3. So, right out of the gate, you know what, if it bombs and tanks horrifically, you know what, then I'm done talking about a building, because clearly the voters may or may not be on board, or we need to reassess how we're gonna look at this, but it does give us a great litmus test on it. How supportive is the community? Good.
I think your litmus too will be, don't forget you wanna raise some money to begin the design process. So that would also be a time when they would say, don't
Well,
bother.
so the flip side of this
Don't
is if
bother.
you establish a trust and you see the trust,
Yeah.
you can, if you were the formation of the trust property, you can see that right out of that, right?
That's true, if you use it for anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, okay, so it's time for us to really get after it, we need to put pen to paper and.
Building project and all associated costs.
And that way, so you have,
Increases.
we could put our ballot could have 3 things. It could have a budget, it could have a para contract, and we could say X amount of money from surplus.
For a new fund.
For a new fund, it needs 2/3 of the support from the town, it's a great litmus test. If the town says no, and it fails miserably, you know what? The town spoke, maybe we sideline this building project and reassess what the town really wants, thinks the needs are.
Yeah.
And if the town supports it, well, then we have a pretty strong affirmation from the town to invest the time and the energy and the resources that it's gonna take.
I like it,
even
Zach.
the people that have been, the critics that have been saying we need to do something about space and have been commenting about the modulars, could even get behind that, or
Yeah.
should get behind that.
Yeah, I like it.
So, I mean, if we're all.
So do you want wording around, creating the trust, ask for wording around that?
So, yeah, I think that would be, let's create another trust fund. And as far as dollar amounts and all that stuff, we don't need to make any decisions on that at this moment, but that, I think, to me, let's put 3 questions forward.
Well, Nate has a 4th, which is not.
I have a 4th.
monetary.
I'm sorry, Nate has a question, I'm sorry, let's
Question.
put 3.
I don't know.
Well,
Just me though.
well, question number 3 and question number 4.
That's the number 4 question?
Right, yeah.
One article, maybe let's put.
So
I think question number 3 and then question number 4 are actually related. No,
So-
they're
Oh,
not.
it's a
Never
high
mind.
school.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
on track.
So before we run with this, again, is this the direction the board wants to go in? Do you not want to fund any of these existing funds and create a new fund that deals with building project and all associated costs?
Yes.
I guess I would just wanna make sure, and I think that we've talked about it, that you feel like there is enough money in these to kind of be a good backup. Like I see that in the technology, there's just $20,000. Is that enough money to do something?
Yeah, I think a catastrophic fail would be like a server, and that's 25,000, so I think we'd be okay.
And we've done a good job of funding technology.
Yeah.
You absolutely have. Okay.
Our replacement cycle is strong.
Yes.
Our projectors are being replaced.
Good things to do things.
Yeah.
We're getting into a system on that, it seems to be working.
Right, so Ken is in favor, Zach is in favor, Nate, you're in favor,
Mhm.
on this one? Gigi?
Yeah, I definitely, I think the one thing that I would be slightly careful of is, unless we do some footwork is just saying, that it's a litmus test. Like, 'cause we don't do, like, I don't really know right now how much the public knows about our intention and really how badly the need is. So, to just throw, that out and say it's a litmus test and it doesn't pass, in my mind, doesn't necessarily mean, like, if we're gonna throw it out there, we might wanna do some footwork ahead of it as well, like show some offices and, really try to get some information out.
We just have to stay on the correct side of that fine line of not lobbying.
I think one thing that if the language could include some sort of, if we go, and it sounds like we're going this route, some sort of acknowledgement that this isn't like we're asking for this for the building to start next year. You don't want to make the language written so that it's like, oh, the building, we give you $300,000 and you're kicking it off next year.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
I mean, I feel like, in terms, I'm thinking of, and Patty, you need more expertise in, like some type of needs assessment, so that there is at least a conveying of an idea of, we need this space for this, and this is what we have. We need this space, and this is what we have.
Well, I think Brian had it. Brian and Kristen both did some good legwork on our space, and we could put up easels at the deliberative, and even at the voting, probably just informational.
Look at the population projections and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I just,
Yeah.
that's all. I'm definitely, Zach, I think it's a really lovely idea, and
I was hoping you were going to say brilliant.
okay, I will.
No, it's too late now.
It's a brilliant
No,
idea.
It's too late now, the moment's gone, but right here.
Everybody says brilliant, but I thought lovely.
It's right here, lovely. Come on, it was right here, I thought you were down there. I'll still say tonight, but.
Mr. Oxnard.
Well, I know some other school districts that have done that, have put money away in trust for buildings.
Hey.
So making easels, making that kind of stuff is not lobbying?
No, as long as it's informational, you're not saying like, hey, please vote for this.
Okay.
It's all
Could-
factual.
Purely, it's information.
Could we speak with somebody like the PTO or the Deerfield Teachers Association or something like that? They're allowed, if we could, I don't know,
If they were in favor,
if they wanted
allowed
to,
lobby it.
they could lobby. So we could make this a larger conversation with other groups. Not, we can't lobby, but
We could provide them with the information, they can make a decision as an organization to do as they like with that
right.
decision.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, so
We'll drop that for next time.
you got that?
Got it?
All right.
You wanna try to draft that sample question that the Mabel's discussing about, or do you?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm happy to. But I threw this out a couple of years ago and was roundly shot down by you. So I'm curious about what sort of language might make sense. Just sort of conceptually, what would make sense?
Shooting it down quite so enthusiastically.
You were pretty enthusiastic in shooting it vehemently.
He's always enthusiastic.
Vehemently crushed that one. Yeah.
Shoot everything else down, so same level of enthusiasm.
Now my feelings are hurt.
You're a passionate individual, it's okay.
And I brought cookies. Those little Buckeyes are delicious. Jim, eat it. It's delicious.
I've had too many Ricolas, it's going to taste weird.
Just eat it.
So what kind of, just a general idea or approach to this question would make sense? I don't even know. How do
Well,
we?
you're asking me to answer a question about the wording before I read the wording.
I think, if I can,
Yes, please.
a sense of the community, if they're willing to be open to spending more money
Right.
potentially for school choice.
Now I remember why I shot it down.
There it is. Right.
That was it.
That was why, because it isn't potentially more money. It is just, that's why I shot it. Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
I shot it down because the language immediately gets, that language elicits a very particular response. So, it needs to be more generic. Does the,
But then it's not as meaningful if
That's
you
right.
get super generic. This is where the conversation
Right,
comes from.
because if you say, do you want high school choice, everyone, of course.
okay,
But it's gonna
if you're willing
cost.
to spend $500,000.
You need to do more homework on this.
I don't see any way, Zach, as much as you don't want to say it, that this is not gonna cost more money. The other high schools that we've looked at are a lot more money.
but there's high schools that are less money.
Where are these high schools?
What was the tuition of
Well, I was
Pembroke?
gonna say Pembroke
Pembroke
Academy.
is
That one is-
Pembroke, and we could probably negotiate with Pembroke.
You think?
But, so I mean, there are schools that are less money. I haven't looked at like Pinkerton's rates lately, but I think Pinkerton was less money.
But
So I'm just saying, it's not, to
But
say
it's
it's
not
gonna
a-
be more money, it isn't necessarily.
it's not, and maybe this is where you're
It's
going,
complicated.
maybe not.
It's hard to ask this question.
It's not, it shouldn't be money based. And I'm not gonna explain this well, I know.
But you're agreeing with me.
I haven't finished yet. On that, I may agree with you, may not, but the point of school choice is being able to have the flexibility to fit, to go where it's the best fit for your family, right? And being able to send your student where you think they're going to succeed, right? That may be Concord, that may be other schools, but just the fact that you are able to have the ability to choose rather than going with a default or having to live with a decision that was made by voters 10 years previously. I'm not downgrading any school that we currently send students to in the least bit as far as quality, because you get out of it what you put into it. But the fact that, and I don't know how we would do it, because I know the multi-school, the schools that have tried multi-contracts have run into legal issues
Yeah.
at the very least.
You run into the issue of not having a high school of record.
Right.
And kids that can't get into school anywhere, and you run into,
Which is a very,
do you want parents to chip in, do you wanna pick a school like, Pinkerton, and then say, if you wanna go anywhere else, you kick in the rest, the parents kick in the rest.
right.
You got a lot.
I know within Deerfield, that is an incredibly sensitive topic of not having a school for kids to go to, and not having them accepted anywhere, because that happened
Yeah,
a couple years ago.
I was here, it's horrible.
Yeah, so, but, how, and the other way to do it would be to say, okay, here's the default that we're gonna pay for, be it the school of record or whatever, and then,
That's an option.
right, basically,
No, it is.
yeah.
So there, as soon as you start talking about school of record, you're dealing with two distinct variables. So say we have a school of record with Concord, as soon as we start talking with Concord and say we don't want all our kids to go here, they have the option to say, okay, well, we're no longer your school of record. I never want to see this community in a situation where there isn't a school of record.
We wanna go back to the summers, or 1990.
No, but
It creates an entirely unfair situation.
But I think the biggest hang-up in that is the clause where, and I get why it's in there, is,
The percentage of kids that go there.
yeah.
You're asking something of them. They have to ask. They expect something.
Right, and I know they have to plan their budgets and their staffing and their services around, they need to know how many are coming every year. I get that, so I don't know if there is a solution to be able to provide that.
I think that's really the first area that you have to explore, is to talk with Concord and find out if they're willing, if you're not willing to give up a school of record and they're not willing to take less than X number of percent, then that limits your choices.
At what point would we, and we discussed this briefly, but at what point do we start discussions with Concord about our future. We're 2 years out?
I mean, we had a meeting with them.
Any time we can extend it if we want to extend it.
Well, I'm just
Or we can
saying,
at least ask them.
So is your question more, should we continue our relationship with Concord, or should we look at other options? 'Cause that
My
sounds-
question comes from what I hear from the community, and the vocal members of our community who talk about this tend to say, why do we not go to Co-Brown? They don't say, why don't we go to Pinkerton, or why don't we go to Pembroke Academy? They say, why don't we go to Co-Brown? That's what the vocal people say.
And on my end of town, they say something else, but
Okay. I would like to have some numbers to base this completely like hypothetical conversation on. And I guess it's certainly so maybe that's we can't even have this conversation without knowing what numbers are you talking about at your end of the town, and like what numbers am I talking about from looking on Facebook. They're so arbitrary that we can get nowhere without some sort of some number of something.
We just got the update on the tuition cost.
Yeah, it's expensive, right? And so that's what Patty was saying, that as soon as we go below 90% to Concord, they're going to say, okay, well, that's not our contract anymore, and they're going to go back up to some higher number that we were paying before 10 years, 15 years ago. And then those students who want to go to Co-Brown, that's what the numbers that we're looking at for them. I don't know what Pinkerton or Pembroke Academy, and I don't know what numbers of kids we're talking about. So there's so much uncertainty here, other than the price tag of where the vocal people.
we know right now.
I love the data you're trying to collect. I don't know how to word a single warrant article to get
Yeah,
the
it's insane.
Well, I was
information.
thinking, it may not be a warrant article question. It doesn't mean that it's not valid data to collect, but a warrant article is not the place to collect the data.
My goal in proposing this again is to try to get to people who are not parents. I mean, who are not involved in the school district, who are taxpayers in town, and who would be footing the bill for an extra $66,000 per student to go to Co-Brown, or
Plus
if we
whatever the rate would be at Concord
when we go below 90%. So there are a lot of people in town who have a voice who I feel like don't share the opinion of the younger parents that we heard from at our though, yeah. And so I feel like that's sort of a small minority of the town. They're vocal, but I don't feel like it's a representative. And so that's what I'd like to get. And it seems like the polls are a way to get people where we could get that information. I just don't know how to get that information.
I would ask my response to either person, why don't we go to, wherever they say, on your side of town, and why don't we go to Co-Brown?
Who go to your side of town?
Someone says I could, but why, my response would be a question to them is, why do you want to go there? And the reason why I bring that up is a lot of the people that I have asked, me, why do we go to Concord? It's so far away. Are people that generally have younger first children in the school system, and they don't have any, or they have limited prior knowledge or not knowledge, but
Experience.
yeah, anecdotal
Awareness.
First-hand information.
from parents that have had students go through Concord. Overwhelmingly, the people that I know that have had students go through Concord has been positive. There have been some negatives, don't get me wrong, there have definitely been some negatives.
It doesn't matter where you go, it's going.
Exactly. But I think it's also part of, why don't we go to Co-Brown? I think they're coming from a position of, I don't want to say fear of the unknown, but it's definitely, change.
Small, close by.
Well, no, it's they're coming from I guess it is fear of the unknown, or it's just being anxious about the unknown. So it's so far away, and it's in the city,
So
and
big.
it's crowded, and get that in there.
So I mean, it's a complicated question. Do you want to chew on some wording?
I will
come to our next
shoot
meeting?
down your question.
Well, if I don't know, if nobody, if nobody can quite picture what this would look like, then it's a fool's errand. I'm not going to spend the time on it.
It sounds like a questionnaire on the exit poll, like grabbing people as they come out
Okay.
with 10 or 15 volunteers and saying, "Can I ask you 5 questions?"
Or a questionnaire handed out at the deliberative session.
But
If
that's,
possible.
That's only
even.
even 50 people.
If 200.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it in both spots.
I mean,
right?
Nate's
You're gonna get
trying to get a sense of the community who's not engaged in what goes on.
And what I agree with,
But I think at the deliberative session, you would get a lot of those voters that Nate is looking for, the people that, the taxpayers that don't have people in them.
No, there's
I
1,500.
think you should do it at both. If we end up going with a questionnaire, I think it should be at both spots.
Before we go any further, if you'd like to do a one article common language next time, if you can wrap
Okay.
your head around it,
Great, thank you.
and then we can talk about a questionnaire going on, but I think we could devolve to
Yeah.
that if we just keep going.
Okay.
Good. All right, anything else with warrant articles or the budget?
I think Amber's good.
Have a lovely evening.
Thank you so much.
Policies. DK-B manifest.
If at all possible, we would really appreciate action to be taken on this one.
Moved as written.
Please.
This deals with the electronic
Yeah,
signature.
our new process.
Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
JJID.
Yep, those were Cindy's proposed changes to the athletic policy.
Does anyone have any suggestions or changes around what Cindy was suggesting?
I have some philosophical questions, if anybody's excited for those.
Go right ahead.
At 9 o'clock. Oh, it's only 8 o'clock.
We're whipping through it tonight.
I take credit for that.
There you go. Go ahead.
So I feel like this idea kind of reminds me of when I was in 7th and 8th grade, and we called that junior high school. We didn't call that middle school. So I'm going to start with that idea. That I'm wondering whether this idea of cutting people who realistically, I mean, are here during the day because it's transportation. I mean, not everybody, but many students, some students, they're provided transportation, they're provided supervision, they're getting exercise, they're doing things, and the school day extends to 4 or 5 o'clock or whatever it is. And I feel like we have students in this town who probably don't participate in the rec program because their parents can't take them, or because they can't get there on the weekends, or whatever it is. And so this is an extension of the school day, which is serving everybody. That's what the public school does. And to move towards the idea of cutting, I think if that's what we want to do, I feel like that's a philosophical change, and that might move towards something like, well, so are we going to have sort of an advanced orchestra or something where we start cutting some people who don't practice? Or are we going to have an advanced I don't know, whatever, fill in the blank. And so if we start down this road, I think this represents a big change philosophically to our school program. And we could say, yeah, it's just sports, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of students who do this not because they're striving to be the best, but because it's fun and they enjoy hanging out with their friends, and maybe they're not at the A level, but it's an important service that's provided by the school district. So I'm not sure about making this change.
Can I?
Please do. Oh, sorry, I'm not.
Well,
Go ahead.
in my experience, and Brian and maybe you guys, I can't remember the last time people were cut. We offered, spells it out, there's 2 levels in there, A and B. So if somebody is not at a competitive level, now granted this can change year to year with and it can change with coach to coach. But there is the opportunity to play, I think, at a lesser competitive level. But I also think the bigger question to address your philosophical piece is what role does sports in general play in education? Sports play. What are we using sports to teach? Besides, sports teaching, teamwork, and that sort of thing. So, bringing everybody on and having them play, or having them participate regardless of skill level. Is it the way we want to approach? We want to use sports to teach certain things, or do we use the competitiveness to teach more about character and work ethic and consequences of good decision making and teamwork and that sort of stuff? So I guess my philosophical question would be, how do we use sports? What role does sports play in the overall
All right, I agree with that.
curriculum?
And if this goes through, then I would like to also see one that pertains to the advanced band.
In a way that
Why not? There's an all-state band that tryouts happened a month ago.
Well, isn't band chairs and challenging for chairs and advancing?
Yeah, and a band which is made up of people who don't practice doesn't sound like a band.
Correct. Sounds like something else.
Yeah.
And so there certainly can be competitive. You can make it competitive by having an orchestra that consists of 10 people, and the 10 they have to audition, and so you cut the ones who don't make it.
I mean,
So yes, it's a big. That's my point. Is that it's a philosophical question. I would like to hear what is the philosophy of our school, but I feel like there's a lot of things wrapped up in it. And if we make this change, then I feel like there's other changes that should be made. I don't know. I'm just one voice, but that's my question.
I think a piece of this was when Cindy and I spoke. The idea was you can have a student who's never played. I'm speaking from soccer because I've coached soccer
Okay.
4 or 5 years here. You can have a student that's played soccer their entire life, and they get to 6th grade, and now they're eligible to play soccer for DCS. You can have a student, and say we set the criteria around 18 students. At that point, it's not manageable. It's unfair to the kids. There's not enough playing time for everybody. You could be at 18 with that 6th grader, but an 8th grader who's never once stepped foot on the soccer field can show up, and now I have to. That person is now, that 6th grader is now no longer on the team because that 8th grader who has never had experience. So that's like a person who's never played an instrument. We don't allow anybody who's never played an instrument to join our advanced band.
Right.
Or they can't come into 7th band without having been in band before.
Okay.
So we don't, they would have to have private, maybe by the end of the year, at their 7th grade year, maybe they could join for 8th grade because they've taken private lessons the whole time. But that's kind of where we came at this right now. Another piece of this too is we're just not getting enough parents or volunteers, not necessarily parents, but volunteers to come out or people to come out and coach. Especially in basketball, for instance, right now we have one coach coaching both A and B boys, and there's not enough of him to go around, and it's going to deplete the team in a way because now to coach for an hour and a half, you're trying to coach 2 different levels essentially. Right. It's like coaching it's essentially like teaching 8th grade algebra and 6th grade basic math in the same room at the same time. And so that's kind of where we came at this for. It's just that from a coaching standpoint, it's difficult.
If that's the issue, then could we put wording in here that would say that some experience on the middle school team is required? So I hear your situation with it. That doesn't make sense. So to maybe put wording that would somehow say that some experience is required to displace a younger player or something like that. I'm not sure how we could specify that. But
I think this is more just trying to say that it's some, so you have like a whole Parks and Rec program, which is skills and fundamentals and developmental and all that stuff. And they all sort of struggle, they don't have enough coaches. I mean, I was at the basketball coaches meeting and people are looking at how they can try to help and jump between multiple teams because there isn't enough people, right, unfortunately. But that being said, at some point, when does they're going to go to high school, it's going to be competitive. But at what point does sports or anything else in life become competitive? And I get your philosophical side of it, but the other aspect of it is if we're preparing them for high school, at what point do we start preparing them for that additional factors in that high school experience? And having those opportunities to play in a competitive team, and sometimes that means that you make the cut, you're on the team, you don't see a lot of playing time, you practice, you work hard, you do everything you're supposed to do, and suddenly that's the character building moment when you start to realize that life is work and you have to put the effort in. I know I'm not a good basketball player. I'm not going to show up on a competitive men's league and say, hey, I'm here to play basketball because I'm not. I'll show up at, rec night and go horse around for an hour and a half.
But to some extent, preparing for high school is what a junior high school does. That's the description, that's the name of a program that prepares kids for high school. It's called a junior high school. And so I feel like if we're middle school is about developing a growth mindset and grabbing students where they are and moving them forward and helping everybody kind of see their strengths and this idea of, they just don't go together. So there are two different approaches to dealing with early teenagers. And we're middle school. So if we want to, that's the root of this conversation. So I don't know. I know there's not enough people, there's not enough money, there's not enough time. I know all that. So I don't know what the answer is. But this is just my question that philosophically this doesn't seem to match a middle school.
What it matches a junior high.
It's more like a junior high.
I guess I've never distinguished the two, one from the other in my own head. It's a group of degrees.
So I don't know.
I don't understand at least there's language in here that's a little, Deerfield youth baseball and softball is crossed out. I think that it got absorbed into Deerfield Parks and Recreation.
I think so.
Yes, I think that's, yeah.
What is the point of that sentence there? Games and meets of school. It just says in addition, Deerfield Parks and Recreation off various stuff.
I think.
Is it saying there's an option for you there?
Yeah, it means if you get cut, then you can go do the rec league in town.
Okay.
I think that's what that means.
Yeah, but like Ken said, that if your parent takes you and gets you there, you
Right.
can do the rec league.
Well, I mean, there's no transportation home at the end
Why
of
have
soccer or baseball or anything of the sort here.
Yeah.
But why have that sentence at all?
In the school policy.
In
It
the
has
school
nothing to do with Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes no sense.
I would say strike that entire sentence.
I hear your point.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we cut a lot of kids. I know sometimes kids, for other reasons, don't wind up on the team. They also wind up not playing for probationary purposes.
Right.
So, and we're missing a sport in here. We're missing volleyball. We should probably put that in there.
What do you mean? To list all of the sports?
I think every other sport is listed there, right?
Oh, I see.
Do we really need to list sports?
That's just the way it was written.
Yeah, I don't know, it's the way it's always been, but I don't
Probably should-
know why.
Probably should go in the
I
handbook.
don't know why you're right, you can't change this.
So I mean,
School board policy.
I would strike the whole sentence.
And that can just be procedural.
Yeah, we don't need to get into which sports, and the school board policy doesn't dictate the sport that sport. Who knows, dodgeball could become a competitive sport.
This could probably go in the handbook.
Yeah, it could probably go to one.
Still,
Yeah, because then the question is like, if it isn't on our policy, can you play the sport?
Right.
Yeah, right. So can we put the, the procedural piece in the handbook,
We put that in as part of the middle school section of the
Yeah.
handbook?
and then just have like the policy.
Yep.
be the
But
first thing.
include the fifth graders are not middle school, but they are on cross
Sure,
country.
yes, I guess
so-
we're just going, yeah.
So really, now that you've removed this page, you're really only looking at the pages and the struck sentence here.
I apologize, I wasn't here, was this discussed last week?
Cindy came with this
Okay.
as a proposed changes, so she asked the board to add it to the agenda. And these are these all Cindy's changes, or you worked on these before?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably like 80-20, 70.
Okay.
She has a lot more experience, obviously, than I do. I only played one sport.
And she,
And she's been here. I mean, she's seen a lot of changes in sports. I mean, sports has progressed since this has been written in, what, I think it was 2007. I mean, 12 years. I mean, people are paying, in 2007, I don't think people were paying thousands of dollars to send their kids to see Coach United.
Right.
You know, so, in 12 years, sports has become a huge factor in people's lives.
The flip side.
If we eliminate the second and third pages, I think a lot of what she was trying to get at goes away.
I just don't think the second and third pages are applicable for the board's policy.
Yeah, I think she just had this
She
because
just-
it was
it
the
was there.
policy.
Yeah.
So I think she was just updating
Yeah.
it to meet the needs of where the
But she
freaking
could put
costing
her
was.
language, maybe not even listing the sports in the handbook, I don't know if we need to do that,
Mhm.
and maybe not. But her, the last portion of that could be in the handbook, about how it operates.
I can
Decisions are
I can just see another sport.
Yeah, they're all- they're all good.
Yeah.
Boy, you
You
didn't
said
say.
you didn't approve that.
You approved there to be a hockey team.
I think that makes good sense. Alright, so let me change that for the next
Right.
meeting, and then we can,
so I guess I'm confused, I don't see anything in here about cuts or no cuts. So I guess,
It talks
was
about
the,
competition.
was the intent of these changes so that students will and can be cut?
There was I think it's the line where it says students are encouraged to participate regardless of their level of experience.
Right, but even if you take that out, then I don't see anything in here that would indicate to me that, and only the most skilled students will participate on,
I think it's on,
is it the end where it says
Yeah.
competitive athletic league at the middle school level, playtime is not equal or.
oh, it's right here. It's under the value, I think it's what, under
basketball.
Under basketball, it says evaluation process. It's kind of hard to read with this cut out. But it says sixth grade placement based on the number of slots available to be filled at that season. And it says all 7th and 8th graders will be placed on either A or B team. 6th graders will be evaluated to fill the slots available. So I think that's the part where that was kind of what I was referring to, where if you have an 8th grader can walk onto a court, never play,
So-
and now I have to remove a 6th grader.
So realistically,
I don't think the word cut was actually ever in the policy, but I think that was the idea, like, if I'm already at my max,
how
and
often does that happen?
I barely make a soccer team, so, so I have not seen that happen. But I think a piece of it too goes back to Cindy's other words back here, where it says, on the last page, but the Southeast League is a competitive, it's a competitive league. So, I mean, if you look at Three Rivers, we're playing against a school that has 500 middle school kids. So they're putting forth their best teams, and that's what we're trying to compete at that level. So a piece of that is that they should be able to play a sport. They should be physically fit and be able to come out.
is the second bullet point really what the blue of all this is geared towards on the first page?
Yeah, I mean, a piece of it is. Yeah, because I think that's the progression of what sports has become.
And that's the philosophical question.
Right. Yeah.
Second bullet point.
Third, yeah. Just the one that says it's competitive. So, to Brian's point, if you have a 6th grader that's played for years and then an 8th grader who's never played, can they play competitively if they've never been?
Right.
And do we currently require everybody gets equal play time? Is that like,
No.
everybody get, okay.
Parents, I think there's a lot of parents that believe their kids should have equal playing time, and you fall into that same situation. Your child's never played. Why aren't they out on the field for half an hour when Billy can play every minute of the game, and so, but that's always been a discussion of the coaches. And it also goes down to, I mean, you have a kid not show up to practice every day, and then the parents still expect them to play the whole game.
Right. And even our son should have to practice because he should have to practice of the club at Seacoast United.
Right, exactly. And we've definitely had that problem too.
And one other thing on this policy, and I'm not going to pick this down too hard, but the way this is written is that if there's a kid who has a detention on the day of the scheduled game, they don't participate that day. So detentions are usually for behavioral or they've done something.
Mm-hmm.
If they're on academic probation, they're out for a week, which means that the kid who did something, got in a fight, did something, got detention for a day, is spending less time off the playing field than the kid academically who didn't do all their work.
If the student is in a suspension, they're not playing that day, or detention.
Right. But do you ever suspend kids for a week?
Yeah.
And it's not I'm just doing the kind of like the apples to apples here. Like academic probation is carrying a heavier bat than a detention or a suspension in many cases.
Misbehavior.
Yeah. That doesn't. I'm not going to pick the scab. It should be equitable. Like that either probation or the detention should match. Like,
For a week.
yeah, I mean it should be.
Well, isn't the serving of detention, isn't that the punishment for the crime?
I said I'm not going to pick the scab right now.
It's,
Before
they're
it's
apples,
I just wanted to hit
apples
it.
and oranges, and they're not equitable.
Just saying, you serve
So
detention, it's a crime and punishment.
But it's something that needs further.
You send your kids to the room for an hour, they come out, it's over, it's done. It's not the same to the room for the hour, you're punishing.
So why don't we chew on this one? I think we have some things to think about and come back next time. Is that okay?
So we have some homework to do.
I think we have one for GDA.
So the two on the bottom are new, and that was as a result of our negotiations with the paraprofessionals. There was reference to these in the handbook, and we realized that we hadn't looked at these in a very long time, and that the job description and the evaluation is really outdated. So I put them on the agenda for you to look at and begin reviewing, but I have asked for the paras and the administration to work together to come up with a proposal for something.
So we will change.
We want to do it.
So that takes us through policies. Could I ask for a 2-minute break hold? Alright, everybody okay with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, thanks.
Justified. Alright, we are back. Informational items.
I have none.
Okay, I have definitely not. Anybody? Informational items? No. I have two that I kind of wanted to bring up. The first one is the storage barn and the fire system for the storage barn. The storage barn at this point is not being used because we're waiting for the fire system. Let's move ahead. I think that we should move ahead and use the facility that we built. What is the number that we need to get the fire folks happy?
Satisfied, 7370 satisfies the chief's request. That includes 1 year monitor.
That includes 1 year what?
Monitor?
You said last time there was a possibility of getting that reduced. Not really a possibility.
The chief has to agree to it, and I mean, everybody thinks it's a little over the top, but everything that we've been fed has been that that's what the chief is gonna reply, and so he's the ultimate end-all.
Could we wait until we get the fiscal year update?
Sure.
Decide to spend $7,500?
Yeah.
Can we take that out of
The new equipment.
the new equipment of the facility improvement?
How much of it is equipment on that
It's
list?
all, I mean, it's equipment and installation. The monitoring is like $450, $420. Is there a reason why we couldn't? It's part of the facility.
I would like to look at the trust again
Yeah.
get our-
The service part.
and get our update, year update, because if we don't need to, then we can just.
And the second part of the, which also ties into the year update, is we just approved the budget with funding for offsetting the cost of the sixth grade ecology camp. I would like to consider for this current year, if the board can, and we have the funding to help offset the cost, because it is increased significantly. So
We need an update.
we need an update for that.
We can do that.
Any other informational items? Public comments?
Hi, public.
All right, and then we do need non-public.
We do.
As per NHRSA 91-A:32A, I would entertain a motion to go into non-public. Nate?
So moved.
Yes?
Second.
Seconded by me.
Yeah, yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Yes. Jim?
Yes.
Yes. We are going into non-public at 8:22. All right, we are out at 8:46. I would entertain a motion to approve the contract for the paraprofessionals.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the contract for the paraprofessionals.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Wasn't there one other thing?
There's no appointments and resignations,
Right.
so that's good.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.